Hello, we're moving on now to look at insider dealing. Now this is another criminal offence, and this offence is about trading shares on a stock market. And the legislation is there to try and ensure a level playing field, because there will always be some people who, perhaps because they work for a listed company, or perhaps because they are the auditors or advisors to a listed company, they have a little bit of extra information. And armed with that extra information, they would be able to go out and buy shares in advance of a price increase, or perhaps sell shares in advance of a price drop, getting a bit of an advantage over those ordinary investors that don't have access to that special inside information. So because of that, we have 3 offences under the Criminal Justice Act 93. The first one is dealing in securities whilst you are in possession with information as an insider. So inside information as an insider. And we'll look at that in more detail in a moment. Another one is encouraging another person to deal in those securities. So you don't buy them or sell them yourself, but you invite someone else to do it instead. And then the third offence is disclosing information other than in the proper performance of one's employment. So perhaps you've been out on an audit, you found out some really interesting information, you come back to the office and you tell the audit partner what you've learned about that firm. That's fine, you are disclosing that information in the course of your employment. But if you then go to the pub with your friends and tell them about it, you are disclosing that information outside of the course of your employment, and you could be committing an offence. So there's quite a few terms mentioned in those 3 offences, and they are all explained in the following table. I want to start with the definition of an insider, because this is quite a nice definition. An insider is a person who has information as an insider, and he knows it is inside information, and if he has, and he knows he has, it from an inside source. I just think I'm reading that definition to you because I think it's a great definition. But it's actually quite clever, because if you were an insider, you would know it. You would know that you worked at that company. You would know that you don't obtain that information because of your job. If you were the auditor at that company, you would know you were an insider. The second part of that definition is that you have inside information. Well, what is inside information? Well, it has to have very specific characteristics. First of all, it's price sensitive. That information is capable of having a significant effect on the price if it were made public. For instance, a profits warning. For instance, information about the appointment of a new director, maybe the launch of a new product. Something like that. Obviously, because the information is about protecting the general public who don't have access to inside information, as soon as information has been made public, it's no longer inside. And also, that inside information must be what we call specific and precise. Now that means that this information relates to a particular company. It's specifically sufficiently detailed to be clear what it refers to. So for instance, inside information that suggests that maybe the price of shares in gas companies will go up over the next 12 months, that's not specific and precise. What we would need to know is the shares in which gas company are going to go up, and possibly even why. So that's our insider and our inside information. What are securities? Well, we've already said we're talking about stock markets here. So shares, debt securities, warranties, anything that is sold on a regulated stock market, so on the stock exchange. Okay, and then we have a few definitions about those offences. Remember, the first offence was dealing in securities whilst in the possession of inside information. Well, dealing basically means buying or selling, okay, or even enter into a contract or an agreement to buy or sell those shares. The second offence was encouraging another to deal. Now, this one, it's worth noting a few points. To commit this offence, you have to encourage another to deal, knowing or having reasonable cause to believe that that person would deal. It doesn't matter whether they actually do deal, and it doesn't matter whether you even tell them why. You might meet a friend, you might say, I can't tell you why, but it'd be a really good idea to go and buy shares in Centrica today. That would be the offence of encouraging a person to deal. Okay? So, Now, even if you have committed one of the offences of insider dealing, there are still defences available to you. So the defences are, and they're slightly different depending on which offence you've been charged with. If you're a dealer or an encourager, then your defences are either you didn't expect there to be an avoidance of loss or a profit arising from that sensitive information. You thought that information had already been disclosed and therefore it wasn't inside information. Or the third one, you would have done what you did even without that information. Now, this one takes a bit more thought. What this is saying is perhaps you had to pay a bill. You had a bill which fell due, and therefore you would have sold your shares at that particular date because you had a deadline. Or maybe you had a contractual obligation to sell on a particular date. If you can show that that was the trigger for your sale and not the fact that the price had changed, or was going to change, then you will have a defence. If you are looking for a defence for disclosing, so if you're a discloser, then your defences are very slightly different. The first one, you didn't expect there to be avoidance of loss or a profit arising. And the second one, a new one, you didn't expect the person to deal. So you disclosed that information to someone, but you really didn't think there was any harm in it. You really didn't think they were going to deal in those securities. And the penalties there for insider dealing, 7 years and an unlimited fine. So try and learn these penalties because they are easy marks in the exam once you've learnt them. Okay, again, we'll leave it there and then we'll come back and have a look at bribery in the next lecture.